Okay, so with our prepared bit of paper, we're just going to go straight in with some water and a big brush. Oh, and some tissue, obviously. So I've got this size brush, which is a throwback to when I did some watercolor some years ago. I'm going to wet the paper, the top of the paper, so it's got a nice sheen, no puddles, but a good sheen. Keep going until it's distributed nice and evenly. I want every bit of that top half covered. And you can see the sheen on my paper. I haven't got puddles, but I've also got a hare, or is it a rabbit? Right. So if you think you've got too much water, just dab your brush on the tissue and go back over. So it's just got a nice even sheen. You can see, if I pick it up, you can see that there's that sheen across it. There's no water dripping off it as yet. And just wiping the masking tape. Okay, with a smaller brush, because I don't really want to paint with that brush, not on this size paper. A smaller brush, I'm going to I'm going to use my Sodalite, but I think I'm going to just put in a little bit of the red just to give it that sort of lavenderish feel. I'm going to do the sky. I'm going to mix some blue and a little bit of the red just to give me a bright orange sky. No, just to give me a little bit of a feel of evening, whichever way. And just I've got a good storm coming. I'm just stroking it on, feathering, I think it's called, down to that horizon line. I'm going to put a little bit of extra up in that top right hand corner. And I think I'm going to have a little bit of blue, light blue, without the red in it, coming down that way. Leave some gaps so that it looks like you've got some areas of light. And that, apart from, I'm just going to darken that corner again, because I've obviously got a bit of a storm coming in. So light strokes. If you've got some marks or some paint lines that you want to get rid of, clean, dampish brush and do it the opposite way, to which you pulled your sky in from right to left. So I'm just mopping up slightly the other way, but clean and damp. And you can only do that when it's at this stage. If it's started to dry, don't touch it. That's it. And we now need to let that have a dry. So I'm going to stop recording. A little bit of this land at the back here. It's only light and airy. So again, I'm using a mix of, I'm using the blue with the browny type color. It comes out as a very grey shade. And we probably could have done this before we removed the masking paper, but that's fine. So I'm just doing a bit of a island there, and you can see that the paint is bleeding up, which is good. So I'm only just touching it lightly with my paint, and it's bleeding up, and that's about as far as I want it to go. It's a fairly low level island, and I'm just getting a bit more of the browny red, reddy brown, and putting it in the bottom there. Just so that it's got a bit of different color in it. And you could even put in a bit of alizarin crimson or anything, just to give it a different flavor. Yeah, it's got autumn on it as well now. Then clean brush, and whilst that island is still dry, I want clean brush, and I'm using a round, a pointed mop. Go underneath with your brush, you've got clean water on, and just touch that island, and that paint that you've just put on will bleed into it. I'm just wiggling it a bit in some places just to get it going. It's not particularly going well. Never mind. We can get over that by putting a bit more on the bottom of the island, and then it will bleed in. Just dotting a little bit of my blue, cleaning my brush, getting a bit of the red and dotting that on the bottom. That's better. And then I'm clean brush, dried off a bit, and just pull it down. Just, well, pull it sideways, but work it down so that it's got a bit of reflection.
Oh, bugger.
So I'm going to take my damp brush and just go back underneath that island, a little bit of the blue and red mix, just to make it and mirror the shape. And then with your rigger, pull. It's just water, and go backwards and forwards and pull it out to the side, and so it gives the rippled effect. And it also breaks up the hard edges in the reflection. So so it's I could do with a little bit of red in there just to reflect it's just to reflect the island there. That'll do. Now I'm going to go on to the sea. This bit of sea here. I want that bit white and this bit a sea here, I'm going to do in the same color as the sky. So it's that mix that you made before. And I'm just, it's onto dry so that it's got a, it's got sparkles in it. So it's not wet on wet, it's dry. And I'm just gently moving my hand backwards and forwards and gently touching the paintbrush down and then lifting it and then down and then lifting it. And by doing that, you get the little silvery or white ripples in the sea or lake or whatever it is. So I want that blended in. Okay. Then with a heavier mix or a thicker mix of that color with a little bit of the red in it, or we're going to do these rocks here, which we start off with just doing, I've got a line where the bottom of my trees are, so I'm just going to, so I've got a fairly large brush and I'm doing it in waves, so curves, and then the curve there. Again, it's dry brushing because I want some white to show through, and I'm using the side of my brush and just pulling it down and along and joining, oh, excuse me, joining that bit up there. So I've got some nice white bits and some bits where the paint has just grazed. Then with a clean damp brush, I'm going to lift out some colour on the tops of those little curves that we put in, just to make little rock things. The paint will go back into it. So there's one there. You don't need too many of them. One there. I'm going to do one here. So you can see, oh, one there. You can, this is the fiddling stage, obviously. So we've got a textured base for the trees to sit on. While that is still reasonably wet, I've got a very small liner brush, but your wriggle will be fine. And in that same color mix, whilst it's still wet, just go into the foreground there and just pull up from what you've just painted, but you won't be able to pull it up with just plain water. And just pull up some grass and in other spots as well. And this is where those white lines come in, have their use. So that's it, but not too much. Remember, grass grows different ways. And I'm just wiggling it with a clean but damp brush underneath, so that it seats it into the foreground there, and doesn't look as if it's just poking up. So the same mix as we have been using. So that's the blue, a little bit more to the blue side this time, because we want it to be dark to show up against that C. So, and quite a strong mix of pigment. So I'm mixing it with a little bit of the red, but mostly blue. And I suppose I work from left to right. So I put in this first tree. I'm holding my brush at the end or near the end and just making that line. Now we want it to be wiggly because they're wiggly trees. And I'm going to dump that brush and go to my liner. So I've got a nice line there. So I'm just thicken it a bit towards the trunk, the bottom, and carry it on out of the page. And I'm just pulling the branches up. That needs to be a bit thicker. They don't have to look like real trees. I'm not saying that these are the real trees at all. I'm going to have a branch off here and then up. You don't have to have lots of branches. We're only saying, hey, this looks like a tree, so it's got to be a tree. There's one there, a bit coming off and a bit coming off there. And a bit coming off there, down the bottom. So I've got another 2 to put in here. So here's number 2. Go right up to the top and off. Out of the picture. Start a branch down here. Now I've just gone over my other line, so I shall have to just move the tree over slightly, the next tree over. So these are sort of long, tall trees, really. They're not botanically correct at all. And the only thing I would say is make the main branch the tallest and taper them down into that sort of shape. So the third one, I'm going to, instead of moving further away, I'm going to do close, because sometimes they grow in. And they can even be the same tree. And I'm not going to do, because the other 2 went up to the top, this one I'm just going to make is a little chap. So I'm just going to put him there. And this is a pig's ear here. And this is the main trunk. I can make it a bit thicker to cover up my mistakes. Where's the other main trunk? There. This is it, yeah. So I'm just making that a bit thicker. Not too thick, just so you've got an idea. This one's got to hold all the rest of it up, so it can be a bit thicker. And this one, this little one at the end, I'm going to join this one onto the middle one. Right. Now, remembering where because I've put in a watery sun, so I can see my suns over there. Now, I'm going to make that bottom a little bit lower than the other ones, so that they don't all look as if they're growing in a line. And sort of with a clean damp brush, I'm just blending in that bottom of that tree so that it looks like it's growing there. And the same with these, because at the moment they just look like I've painted them on. So just seat them in by blending the bottoms into the foreground with a clean damp brush. So I'm going to start this tree over this side. I'm going to start it further into the closest to the end of the page, and remember where my sun is. And there's its line. Doing the same with that tree as I did with the others, just blending the bottom in so that it looks as if it is actually growing there. And now I think I need it a little bit thicker. That's it. I find doing trees extremely therapeutic, which is why most of my paintings have got a tree or two in them. Now I want to leave my sun so that I can see it. So I'm going to just put branches out this side. Just pulled up a branch there. And then once it's past the sun, it can have a branch at the top above it. And that's all I'm going to do for that one. This one here, I'm going to start it not quite on the edge, but fairly close. Pull a line up. We've gone very close on that one. I might just do that as a little one. So thicken it up a bit. And out of the paper, and you're just going to do some branches that cross over into the other tree. There's a little branch down there. Some little tweaky things coming off of it. Shall I leave it at that? Yeah. I was going to put in another one, but I think that's probably enough. And I'm just blending that away. So we've got 5. I've got 5 trees, which is fine. I can rub this out later. And with the same mix I'm just going to put in a few leaves, which are just little dots on the branches. They're the leaves that get left behind and sit there until the next big wind comes and takes them away. So I'm just using my rigger and I'm just going a little dot. And it doesn't really have to be attached to anything. They can just be in the area, and that will, your eye will just say, yeah, that's a leaf and it's attached there. We don't need any further explanation. You can put a few more branches in. Don't overdo it, because we're looking at the island at the back of it. We're looking through the trees, so the trees aren't the focal thing. So we just got a few leaves. That tree doesn't look right. That's better. And also to give the impression of a little bit of leaves and tiny sticks on the end of those branches, I'm just going to do a bit of splatter. I'm going to get a bit of tissue and cover the bottom half. So I'm using my rigger and the same colour paint and just splattering a bit of dead leaf branch idea. And that's saved. That just gives you the idea of, oh, yeah, there's something there, but I don't know what. And of course, what we should have done was put in the white before we did the trees even. However, we didn't. So I'm just going to finish off with a bird or two. So using my rigger. Remember, birds are not V's, they're flat. So they've just got the tiniest, a little bit of kink in them. I have a bit of 5. Then I'm going to find so put in a little bit of white on the waterline. I've helped the sun and I've rubbed out any pencil marks. And I think I've done.